Harrington just moved to the Villages.
Who?
Doug Harrington.
Douglas. That's a name that keeps popping up like a bad penny.
He bought a courtyard villa in Summerhill.
That's a surprise.
Hey, don't you two go a long way back? I've heard you mention him before.
We both taught at the same high school, and in fact, he was my mentor teacher, 1980.
Way back.
I never thought I'd hear him buy a place around here. He always talked about how much he hated the thought of retirement. Douglas didn't like change of any kind, really.
Do you think you'll get together?
I doubt it. The last time I saw him was a few years ago, and we didn't leave on the best of terms.
Oh, that's too bad. What did he teach?
Math, sort of.
Sort of? What does that mean?
Well, Douglas's background in math was a little bit lacking. He wasn't certified to teach it.
The union went nuts, but it was no big deal. Every kid had a math book. I had the instructor's manual with all the answers in it. And I used old tests I found laying around, left over by the last guy that taught the class.
You ever have any problems?
Occasionally things got a little shaky, but generally not. Well, this one time, a kid asked me to define this word, asymptote. Okay, these are high school kids, right? So it's got the word ass in it. So the class erupts.
Well, what's that?
Well, I didn't know. And this one kid just kept laughing. And I'm thinking, what, this is really important. This is something that we all really need to know. When was the last time somebody said, man, if we just had the asymptote, we'd be able to solve this thing? Anyway, I told him I didn't know, but I'd find out.
Well, what is that, asymptote?
A line that continually approaches a given curve. The lines get closer and closer, but they never cross the X or the Y axis.
A math thing.
Right.
So that's how you and Douglas got together.
Right. He came down to my room and asked me to explain it to him, and that's when I discovered that Douglas doesn't have much of a background in math.
Well, how much did he have?
None. He had never taken a single college course in math.
And he's teaching high school math classes. How does something like that happen?
He was a football coach. At first, he was hired to coach full-time. But after a few years, the district went through some cutbacks. They couldn't afford a full-time coach. They had to stick him in a classroom. I guess the principal decided that math was the place where he would do the least amount of damage.
Amazing. Ninth grade?
No, that was my level. He taught 11th and 12th grade.
Oh, incredible.
Well, most of the kids who take that level math are pretty much math nerds, and they can fend for themselves. And teaching that allowed him to sprinkle in some of his football players in order to keep them eligible.
Oh, did they get much out of those classes?
Well, I talked to one of his players who told me he was going to major in engineering in college.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he lost interest when he found out there were no trains there.
And the school assigned Doug as your mentor.
Well, that was my idea. It was my first year teaching, and I thought Douglas could teach me some things about how to handle kids. And I could help him with how to make lesson plans for his classes.
How well did that work out?
Well, it got off to a rocky start. Douglas didn't know how to write a lesson plan. And on Fridays, holy game day, he wouldn't even try to teach a lesson. He would put on a film and leave the classroom and go out and make preparations for the game.
Films? About math?
No. Films of the previous week's football games.
And the school let him get away with that?
Well, I guess none of the kids ever complained, or if they did, the school chose to ignore it. You know, football was pretty important in our little school, and Douglas's team was doing well. I mean, they were undefeated.
I can't believe they would let him do that.
I know. I tried to talk to him about it. I told him he was shortchanging those kids and that he needed to concentrate more on his classroom duties.
Well, did it help?
A little. I mean, when football season was over, he started coming down to my room more often, and we became kind of close.
And that's when you started going out?
Well, we were talking one day, and I told him how much I enjoyed dancing. So he invited me to come over to his house for pizza and dancing. But when I got there, I found out he didn't want to go dancing. He wanted to watch it on TV.
Oh.
Douglas said that he couldn't dance because of an old football injury. But that didn't keep him from running laps on the football field with his players.
Dance Fever! I used to watch that show every Saturday night. There was this one terrific dancer on there, Darcel. Man, I could watch her for the whole hour.
I think I remember that. You know, Doug, there's something I've always wanted to ask you. how is it you could go through three marriages and never learn how to dance?
Whoa, you don't learn how to dance, you just do it. You're in command of your feet, right? Mm-hmm. Well, wherever your feet go, that's what the dance steps are. Now, there is that one kind of dance I never really warmed up to. You know, I was a little self-conscious out there shaking and jiggling in public, but I never liked it. But I can do it, I just don't like it.
So you actually courted a woman for, well, close to a year and never took her dancing?
Well, look, if you're really serious about somebody, you should spend a lot of time at home. The best marriages are spent at home, a lot of time together.
Well, how well did that work out for you, Doug?
Well, pretty well, actually. You know, I used to watch this one TV channel. It had old reruns, and Karen would come over, we'd pop up some popcorn, and we'd sit down and watch sitcoms like Dobie Gillis or Our Miss Brooks. She really liked that one because it was about,
that.
you know, high school teachers.
Uh-huh.
I hated that show. That Miss Brooks spends all of her time scheming for a promotion. Yeah. Not for herself, but for her boyfriend, so that he can make enough money and they can get married.
Oh, yeah. I remember that show.
And whenever Miss Brooks ran into some obstacle, a bubble would pop up over her head showing a white picket fence. And she would remember her goal, a husband and a house with a white picket fence.
Did you ever tell him that?
No, I didn't. I was just out of college in a brand new job in a strange city, and I thought I was ready to settle down. Douglas would have been considered a pretty good catch. I mean, he was reasonably good looking, a good job, a steady job. I thought I could overlook the other stuff.
What other stuff?
Football. Man, is there a better way to spend a fall weekend than watching football? Saturdays, you got college. Sundays, the pros. But what did Karen want to do? Man, she wanted to go to some quilting show or farmer's market. Well, you know, football's only in the fall, and it is almost sacred.
Well, most women can live with that.
Well, there was also basketball, okay? But only college. Well, but the high school team, too. And then there was baseball, but only the major leagues. No soccer, no hockey. Oh, well, okay, Stanley Cup playoffs, of course.
Sounds like you're a normal American male.
And that's what the problem was. There was too much male stuff. This was the era of the feminist movement, right?
Yeah.
You know, at school, we had so many faculty meetings talking about how you talk to a woman, how you talk about women. And these endless workshops, like, how do you learn different ways to say things? Like, chairman, what do you call that? Chairperson?
Yeah.
Chairwoman? Chair... Whoa, that is some nice varnish you got there, Chief. Anyway, Karen was really into this feminist stuff. I bet she picked it up in college. This was back in the 70s, you know. Hey, who was that congresswoman? Remember that lady from New York that used to wear the floppy hat and was always on TV a lot?
I remember.
And Gloria Steinem, remember her? She was actually pretty decent looking. I had no idea what she was doing being a feminist.
What's looks got to do with feminism?
Are you kidding me? Young, good-looking women are not discriminated against. They got an advantage.
That's true.
Or do you think it's a coincidence that all these long-legged blondes end up in broadcast journalism?
Yeah, I never thought about it that way.
But you know, I didn't have a problem with feminism. I was in my late 20s. I was looking for a longer-term relationship, maybe even marriage. It just didn't come off.
How come? What was the deal breaker?
Was it because he was too much of a traditionalist?
No, I grew up with a traditionalist father, and compared to him, Douglas's language was a lot less salty.
Doug was too opposed to women's rights, is that it? He didn't like women asserting themselves.
Douglas wasn't opposed to women working. I mean, all of his wives had jobs. His views about women were not much different than most men of his era. And compared to my father, Douglas was almost liberated. My dad only paid for me to go to college because he thought it was a great way to meet a good husband.
Oh. Was it because he was...
We never got that far.
Well, then what?
I just wasn't ready to get married. Come on. I wanted to go back to school, you know, get a master's degree, get that out of the way before I got married so that I wouldn't have to go part-time and attend to my children.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
So I was gone for a couple of years, and I thought about Douglas and what my life might have been like had we gotten married.
Well, we all have those kinds of thoughts.
So with a master's degree in hand, I came back to my old job. I liked it there. I liked what I was doing, and I liked the kids.
But no Doug.
No. When I came back, Douglas was already married. And what a match that was.
Whoa.
Oh, Greta. What a sweet girl. We hit it off immediately, you know. She taught history, but to tell you the truth, my main interest was her story and the visual presentation of it.
A real knockout, huh?
Man, just the way she walked down the halls would drive me wild.
So the attraction was mainly physical?
It was rocket science.
Rocket science?
She had breasts like Saturn V boosters. But that's not all. That's not all. She had a sweet personality. None of this feminist stuff for her. And she brought joy wherever she went. She was sweet and kind.
And so dumb that it wouldn't surprise me if she had to have TGIF stamped on her shoe.
What's that?
Toes go in first.
Oh, my.
She came into the faculty lounge one day after having taught about the Russian Revolution. She wanted to know if that Lenin was the same one that played with the Beatles.
Oh, a coach.
Volleyball.
Just follow the bouncing ball.
She and Douglas were made for each other. The blonde leading the blockhead. Although that union didn't last very long. Though I can't imagine why.
Dance, dance, dance. That's all she wanted to do. You know, the way I look at it, men are required to dance twice in their life. At prom and at their wedding. That's it.
A lot of men like to dance.
Oh, yeah, I understand. I get that. They're doing it for their wives. But I think dancing is kind of like flute music. You listen to too much of it, other guys are going to question your sexuality.
Flute music, huh?
You know, with regard to dancing, there are two social conventions I always observe.
Social conventions? What are you talking about?
Okay, you never go out and dance by yourself. Otherwise, the other guys are going to say, what are you, some kind of nut?
Yeah, I can see that.
And you never dance with another guy, even for ethnic folk dancing.
Ethnic folk dancing? Well, where's that going on?
It's not. That was left back in the old country along with kilts.
No, that's an interesting viewpoint.
Anyway, that's what soured things between me and Greta.
She liked to dance a lot?
Oh, she liked to dance a lot. That's all we ever did. I did that for years with her. We did the disco era. Remember that? Guys in the flowered shirts, open down to your navel and the gold chains.
Yeah.
And then that morphed into the John Travolta with that urban cowboy thing. Remember that? The floppy hats,
Yeah,
the clunky boots, and riding a mechanical bull.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, after a while, she said, we got to do something new. Let's try ballroom dancing. And she wanted me to take lessons. I was having none of that. I put my foot down.
So what happened?
She met this guy somewhere. I don't know where. Some guy. And he's putting his foot down and down and down. He was a flamenco dancer from Bolivia. And so she starts putting her foot down with him. Next thing you know, they're stepping out and sashaying right out of my life.
Wow, Doug, that's too bad.
It was about this time I started thinking of Karen again. What it would have been like if we had gotten married. Okay, you know, we would have argued about the proper role for women. Okay, no problem. Those quiet evenings together, they were so wonderful. Oh, Karen.
Oh, look, dragon boats.
I've been thinking of trying that. It looks like fun.
Probably good exercise. Pretty strenuous, though.
Oh. So, when you came back, you were ready to settle down and get married?
Well, I thought I was.
Did you find someone immediately?
No, it was tough. I mean, I wasn't from the area.
Yeah.
I'd been there the year before, but the only person I was really close to was Douglas. I wanted to avoid anyone at school.
Yeah.
Once I had to fend off a parent, a married one.
Ooh. So on went the search.
So I tried the singles bars, way far from town. I didn't want a parent to see me there. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with it, really. It's just that most people don't like seeing their teachers hang out in bars.
So that didn't work out.
No. So then I tried the personal ads in the newspaper. You remember those? SWF seeks single man for friendship and possible romance.
Oh, yeah.
I felt like a spy sending coded messages, a cloak and dagger operation.
You wear the cloak, they bring the dagger.
Anyway, a lot of married men figured that was a better way to operate than cruising singles bars. I quickly found out that wasn't a good way to find the right guy.
So what about friends? Couldn't they have helped you out?
Yes, many tried. And I guess some of them would have been all right, but those dates just didn't feel right, you know? I'd given up, and then one day, it happened. I was at a conference and I met this guy. The perfect guy.
Or one who seemed like one.
Not seemed like, he really was. Ivy League graduate, you don't find too many of them in public schools. He was a teacher at the time, but he could have been a principal somewhere. As a matter of fact, I think he later became a superintendent.
And there was love?
Oh, yes. Strong attraction. We did a lot of outdoor stuff. Camping, kayaking. During the summer, we went to Maine, Bar Harbor. We hiked Cadillac Mountain.
You must have felt like you were on top of the world.
I was. And Douglas, well, this was about the time that he and Greta were breaking up. I'd see him at faculty meetings, and he seemed so down. But that didn't last long.
Whoa, nice kitchen.
Oh, thank you, Doug. Hey, can I get you a beer?
Another Yingling would be pretty nice.
No problem. Anyway, Doug, you were telling me about your second wife, the one from France, Valerie, wasn't it?
Yeah, we met at a Super Bowl party. It was coupe de food.
Love at first sight. There you go.
Yeah, she'd never seen American football before, and I was only too happy to try to explain to her the intricacies of the West Coast offense.
Really? Well, what did she do for a living?
She ran an art gallery downtown. But I'll tell you, the finest piece in there was her. Man, I loved looking at that piece of sculpture. And she had this accent that drove me wild. Ooh, those players in the uniforms, they are so sexy. What more could you ask for? I had French cooking at dinner, French nookie at night. It was magnifique.
Oh, wow. But apparently that didn't work out either.
Well, you know, she tried to make me into somebody that I wasn't. Mr. Artsy-fartsy. High culture all the time.
Yeah, I'd hate that. I'd hate that.
Well, anyway, like I said, she ran this art gallery downtown. And so when she had an exhibit, she wanted me to come down to, to support her, and I would. So
Sure.
I'll go down there, and I'm hanging out with these people with nose rings and multicolored hair, and some guys in the background playing on panpipes.
Yeah, and the art?
The art, it was like some junk that had been scrounged together from a garage sale and jumbled together by somebody in a drunken stupor.
Wow.
But, I wanted to support her, and I was all right with that. So I'd go down there and stand and nibble on cheese, drink some Zinfandel, and smile while some guy is droning on in the background about the decay and corruption of American consumer culture.
So, what was the problem?
Oh, well, I supported her at all her events, but she never supported any of mine or even ever took an interest in anything I was doing.
Really?
That Super Bowl was the first and only football game she ever watched. And she never came to any of the high school events. They even did an art show and she wouldn't show up. Still, she's expected me to go to all these highfalutin events.
Yeah? Yeah, like what?
Opera.
Oh, opera.
I like a good musical as much as the next guy. But in this thing, they're singing 100% of the time, up to and including their daily routines. What are we having for dinner? I can't tell you right now. I have to go to the bathroom. So, who knew your daily routines could be so dramatic?
And the music.
Well, let's just say the tunes were not something I'm listening to on my morning drive.
Yeah, I feel the same way about that kind of stuff.
These patio villas all look alike.
Oh, I know. I've been thinking of adding some crown molding to give it a little accent. So, back to the perfect guy.
Yeah.
Let me guess. He didn't want to make a commitment?
No, Chuck proposed as soon as we got back from Maine. We were going to be married the following summer after school got out.
Your parents didn't like him?
Oh, my parents were ecstatic about him. He's just the kind of guy my dad would have chosen. And before you ask, his parents were very happy with me, too.
So, Your best friend didn't like him.
No, Adele adored him. She spent more time thinking and planning the wedding than I did.
Was it because well, then what?
To tell you the truth, I don't really know what happened. We seemed to be two people moving along on the perfect curves of a heart and coming together as one. And then it just slipped away.
Did something happen?
I was addressing the wedding invitations, and I just got this tiny thought in the back of my head.
A tiny thought.
Just this tiny little bit of doubt that grew and grew. And then I got this feeling in the pit of my stomach. I was thinking about spending my whole life with somebody. I couldn't finish the invitations. I had to go out for a walk.
Everybody has doubts about tying the knot.
But to me, at that moment, it felt like tying a noose. I couldn't finish the invitations.
Did you talk it over with Chuck?
I did. I wanted him to talk me out of it, get me back on track. But the funny thing was, he was thinking the same thing too.
Two pairs of cold feet.
So we decided to postpone the wedding for a while, and a couple of months later, we just separated apart and drifted apart.
That's too bad. You must have been pretty down by then.
The lowest I think I have ever been.
And ballet. Ballet! Who wants to go watch people dance? Especially guys in tights contorting their bodies into ridiculous positions. You know, what parent would want their son to go into something like that? Don't they know they're going to be emotionally scarred for life?
Yeah, I wouldn't let my wife drag me to something like that.
Anyway, after a few years of that, I'd just about had it. And then one day, she comes home and says, "Hey, honey, why don't we go tour art galleries in Europe? We could spend all summer over there." And I said, "Oh, you stay in French, fooey on that." And after that, it wasn't long before we called it quits.
Yeah. You can only take so much of that kind of stuff.
And you know, so right about that time, I started thinking of Karen again. You know, she was back in the building teaching, and she still wasn't married. And I started thinking, what would it be like if we could trade barbs about Bush and that horny hillbilly? It wouldn't be too bad.
So you started dating again.
Well, no. About this time, a giant boulder rolled into the road.
Really?
It was just an unfortunate chain of events that I couldn't do anything about.
After I broke up with Chuck, I decided to go back to school part-time and get a master's degree, my second. This time in educational administration. I took part in school improvement meetings, I organized professional development days, and I went to as many school events as I could, including football games.
Wow, that was a big commitment.
When Mr. Sandstrom decided he was going to retire, I thought I had done everything I could to get that job. I'd even done an internship for a semester in the year prior to his leaving.
And you lost out to a man, right?
I lost out to Douglas, and he didn't even want the job.
How does something like that happen?
They wanted to move him out of coaching, and the state was increasing their requirements for teaching, so they had to put him in a position where he could do the least amount of damage.
Well, I told them we'd need a couple years of rebuilding. A couple years to get back to our winning ways. Boy, they didn't want to hear that. They wanted results now.
Yeah, that happens even on the high school level these days.
But you know, what they really wanted was a younger coach. So when an opportunity came up in administration, I took it. I figured a kick upstairs is better than a kick in the pants.
How did Karen take it?
Oh, not well at all. I know this. But you know, if she hadn't lost out to me, it would have been to somebody else.
Why was that? What was the knock against her?
She didn't have what it takes to do that job. Well, she had her master's in administration. Big deal. College she went to, those professors probably got fired from the places where they used to be, whether they worked there at all. They were ignoramuses. And you know, some of those eggheads spent their whole life on college campuses, never venturing out into the grown-ups world.
Yeah, stuck in an ivory tower.
And will you please explain to me how someone who hates football can work as an administrator at a public high school. Okay, so you don't like football, but the kids do. The parents do. The community does. And that's who votes for school board members.
Yeah.
And it's not because they're jock sniffers. They just realize that football brings the community together.
And it's a big part of high school.
That's right. And it's a big part of the whole community.
And Karen didn't understand this?
Now, Karen, she had never even gone to a football game until she got this interest in administration. And then she shows up and doesn't realize you're supposed to wear your team's colors on game day. In fact, there was this one homecoming game. She showed up in the press box wearing the other team's colors. Boy, did I hear about that one.
Wow.
How was I supposed to know the other team's school colors? And what is this anyway? Some kind of a gang ritual where the Bloods and the Crips with college degrees?
I guess those people didn't take it very well.
They reacted as if I had given nuclear secrets to the Taliban.
Some people can get really worked up over something that's really trivial.
Okay, so I don't like football. To me, it's a bunch of spectators in need of exercise sitting in a stadium, stuffing themselves with junk food, and watching a bunch of young men in tight pants crash into each other. There's societal value in that?
I agree. There's too much emphasis on football in high schools.
Personally, I don't understand why parents let their sons do that. A lot of them are going to have physical problems later in life.
That's true.
But I knew what my responsibilities would be as an administrator. I could be a leader, an athletic supporter for all the teams.
And that's why they rejected you. The only reason you wore the wrong colors at a football game.
Well, there was a little more to it than that. The interview committee was a little upset with what I proposed to do as an administrator.
Well, like what?
I wanted to put more emphasis on girls' sports, put them on the same basis as boys, as the law requires.
And how were you going to do that?
I was going to promote them more, spend more money on girls' sports, give them equal access to the facilities, and I was going to talk to the league about changing the girls' basketball season so it would be equal to the boys.
And then force march people into the stands so they can sit and watch these girls make these dainty little shots on tippy toes, after which the ball goes in, what they're directed to applaud wildly at penalty of the most hideous torment known to man. Or should I say person?
Yeah, Doug, there are always people who are trying to push this equality thing when it's just not there. People are not interested in girls' sports. And I always get mad when I see an article on the front page of the sports section about a basketball game and then find out it's a girls' game.
Karen wanted to move volleyball to the fall so the girls could qualify for scholarships. She didn't know that the football team needs a gym in the fall, and no girls from our high school are ever going to get a scholarship for volleyball.
Are there actually spectators at those kinds of games?
Oh, there's a sprinkling of fans in the stands, mainly parents, but people don't go to those games, volleyball. They don't even go to any girls' games. Why would we spend a lot of money on them?
I take it Karen's ideas didn't go over too well with the administration. You were the safer choice.
And I was the saner choice. The community would have been up in arms if Karen had gotten her way.
The interview committee was not impressed with what I had to say. The school board president sat there with his lips puckered like someone who'd taken a bite of broccoli and intended to spit it out.
So they decided on a male coach over a female academic.
And I decided I needed a new trajectory on my career path. I would take my show on the road, teach overseas. The world would become my neighborhood and my students would be my family. So I turned in my resignation and up and away I went.
Wow, that must have been quite a culture shock.
First stop, Egypt, where half of the taxi drivers lecture about the immoral women of the West coming in to corrupt the youth. And the other half want to be your special friend. One of them was so aggressive he chased me all the way to my apartment building.
Wow.
But I managed. And from there, I went to South Korea, where the students were wonderful. I mean, there are no discipline problems there. In fact, they have laws to limit the amount of time that students can spend in outside class tutoring. Otherwise, the kids would never go home.
And then Germany.
Back to civilization, an American school in Berlin. I liked my time abroad, and things were looking up.
Oh, I almost forgot. Our college reunion meets on the 5th, a dance.
Oh, sounds like fun.
I wonder if Doug Harrington will be there. I was a student there when he played football. He still has a lot of fans among the alum.
Well, I'm not one of them, especially after what happened a few years ago.
Why, you were still mad he beat you out of an administrator position?
No, I'd long ago forgiven him for that. As it turned out, it was a blessing in disguise. I never would have taught overseas if I'd have gotten that administrator's position.
Well, then what?
Well, things were going merrily along in Europe, but I was starting to think about my landing on Mars.
Mars?
Middle-aged retiree station, where I would go after my career was over. I was looking forward to somewhere far away from icy, wintry blasts and chattering students and nattering nabobs of parents and administrators.
A comfortable retirement.
I had talked to quite a few teachers when I was home in the States during the summer, and a number of them said that I should look into this place in Florida called the Villages.
The well-read planet.
Well, at the time, it was just this tiny dot on the map.
It sure has grown a lot the last few years.
And then, I think it was about 2006, Douglas called. He had retired from the schools and was working as a financial advisor. He wanted to manage my retirement accounts.
I think I heard he did that for a while. Mm-hmm. He sent out a lot of promotional letters to the alums.
Right. Well, I've always been very careful with my money. I mean, I'm a saver. But I was working overseas. I didn't have time to look over my retirement accounts.
I can understand that.
But he seemed to be doing pretty well, and I'm not going to lie to you, I kind of wanted to see him again. Work with him. I mean, even if it was only for a brief time in the summers, and even though he was married at the time.
You know, after Valerie split, I decided I needed to do some things differently.
Yeah?
I need to look at the longer term down the road. And, you know, the district, they wanted me to make some changes in the near future. Well, my career in education was kind of on a downswing at that time. And this was that era when the state and federal government were requiring all this testing. Remember that initiative, No Child Left Behind? Testing, all the time.
Yeah, my kids had to go through that.
Well, anyway, the first set of standardized tests, we didn't do that well. And so the district was getting impatient. And that's when the finger pointing started. It was the students. It was the teachers. It was the administrators.
A lot of those fingers pointed at you.
Well, I was the principal, so yeah. When it was only natural for me to get blamed when things started not going so well.
So that's when you decided to retire?
Well, my time in education was coming to a close, so I thought I'd look around, see what I might want to do next.
And that's when wife number 3 came along.
Yeah. Margaret worked for a financial services company where I'd done some investing.
Okay.
She was really smart. You know, a good businesswoman. And all of her figures were perfectly rounded, if you know what I mean.
A good merger.
It was. Her children were all grown up. I didn't have any. So the next few years was a perfect time for me to build a nice little nest egg. And then she talked me into getting my securities license because she figured I was good with numbers because, you know, I taught math.
Well, how did that work out for you?
Well, I had a lot of clients. You know, there were so many people in the community that knew me because I'd been football coach and principal, and a lot of them trusted me. Okay, I wasn't the financial whiz. A lot of guys in the company were better than me with numbers and all that financial stuff. But I'd done a little investing. I knew my way around.
So what went wrong?
Look, I'm no dummy. I did not invest in real estate. I saw the bubble in the housing market and I stayed away from it.
So what did you invest in?
It really wasn't clear what Douglas was putting my money into. He'd send these various reports about funds that he had put my money in, but I was working in a foreign country. I didn't look at it that closely. I didn't have time.
We didn't spend a lot of time looking at our investments.
I'd get these rosy newsletter reports, and there would be Douglas's grinning face and him reporting about how strong the market was and how well his clients were doing.
Same thing with us.
Well, when the recession hit in 2008 and I came home for the summer, I decided to have a closer look at just what Douglas had put my money into.
Where did he put it?
Oil wells. that weren't producing. Aggressive investments in the developing world. A special toilet for the well-endowed man. I lost almost $30,000.
Oh, wow. A lot of people lost a lot of money in the stock market. You know, that crash put quite a dent in our funds.
I thought I was going to have to give up my dream. I'd be stuck working for a few more years.
Oh, work isn't so appealing when you have to do it.
Mars seemed like a very far away place by then, and Douglas was pretty hard to find here on Earth. He sent out this report to all of his clients, thanking them for his support during these difficult times. More likely, they were pounding on his door, yelling for his scalp.
Drops back to pass. Looks toward the left pass.
Hey, let's go in there and watch the rest of the game.
Yeah, sounds good.
You know, I felt bad, but there was nothing I could do. It wasn't my fault the economy tanked. And I wasn't the only one who lost money.
Yeah.
All the other guys on Wall Street did too.
Yeah, a lot of people took too many risks back then.
But you know, they seemed like good bets. Those oil wells, my grandparents had an oil well in Kansas, and it carried them through the Depression. And those toilets, they were designed by a college football player, a linebacker at Virginia Tech.
But it didn't work out.
Yeah, after I'd lost so much money, the firm decided to show me the door. Oh, and then Margaret decided, well, maybe we didn't have that much in common.
So then it was on to the villages.
Well, not right away. My sister and her husband had moved down here about 3 years before, and they really wanted me to come down, but I just didn't like the idea.
Why not?
I mean, who wants to be around a bunch of old people?
I got news for you, Doug. In case you haven't noticed, you're starting to fit into that category rather nicely.
Look, a bunch of old geezers sitting around a Cracker Barrel, reminiscing about the time Eisenhower came to town.
There's a Cracker Barrel around here? I'll have to check that out.
And you know, I didn't feel old. I mean, how did this happen to me? Some burglar came into my bedroom at night and stole my body cells and all my other valuables bit by bit?
Yeah, he came into my neighborhood too.
Well, I was set in my ways too. I wasn't ready for such a drastic move. You know, to be away from my friends, the people I knew.
And yet here you are.
Well, after Margaret and I divorced, there was a couple brutally cold winters up there, all alone, and I didn't like it.
I'd hate it if I had to spend a winter all by myself in the north, or anywhere for that matter.
And my own watering holes were not the same. They were now populated by aliens, people from a different generation. All the people I knew, people my own age, didn't go there anymore.
Yeah, life changes when you retire. You start noticing that the world has moved on.
And my forays on Tinder were not exactly generating firewood.
What a surprise.
And you know, I found out I didn't have as many friends as I thought I had. So many of my clients who were there didn't like the idea of me being in town. Some of them even approached me and berated me about losing their money.
Yeah, that had to be hard on you.
Well, one brutally cold winter, I decided I'm taking the plunge. I sold my house up there and bought a house down here.
Good.
I got to thinking, you know, if you're going to have to serve out your old age sentence, you might as well do it somewhere that's got a lot of golf.
How's that working for you?
Pretty good, pretty good. As soon as I got down here, I got a golf cart and I started playing golf 3 days a week, joined a couple clubs. I've been doing all kinds of stuff I never thought I would do. Maybe an old schnauzer can learn new tricks.
Of course. For the truly young at heart, well, change is always possible. You know, Doug, our old alma mater is having a dance. Maybe you should go. Maybe you'll even see Karen there. You two have had such a long history together. Might be fun to talk about old times.
I doubt that Karen would want to see me after all that's happened. The only dance she might want to do is a fandango on my face.
For a while, I was really down in the dumps. I thought about ways to get back at Douglas. I wanted to tee up his head and kick a 50-yard field goal with it. See, I did learn some things about football.
Oh, it was only natural to feel that way.
But then I had another problem to worry about. My mother called and told me she had stage 4 cancer.
Oh, no.
So I retired from teaching and moved back home to take care of her. I was so focused on what was going on with her that I didn't think about anything else. And then when she died, all I could think about was how I was going to make a living. I probably couldn't get another full-time teaching job. I was too old for most districts. But then fortune turned. My mother had left me quite a bit of money, so my retirement plans were back on track.
Oh, Mars was beckoning.
And I answered the call in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Does he know that I'm going to be here?
Oh, I'm sure Roger told him.
Well, I hope we don't get into an argument. We didn't part on very good terms.
Oh, that was years ago. Ancient history. And people can change. I mean, look how much you've changed over the years. And besides, being here mellows everybody. Oh, it's Doug. He's parking his golf cart. So I guess he decided to come. Oh, I can't believe it.
What?
He's got a bumper sticker on his cart. It's a picture of a pear with the words, "I like 'em sweet, but not like this."
Well, that sounds like Douglas. I guess change for him can only go so far. I'm not sure it was a good idea to come.
Oh, come on. All those years you've known each other, they weren't all bad. I'm sure you two have a lot to talk about.
Oh, Karen!
Douglas, it's been a long time.
Yes, it has. It is so good to see you.
Yes, well, you weren't too anxious to see me last time. I had a hard time getting a hold of you.
Yeah, I'm bad. Look, I'm sorry about your money and everything, but it wasn't all my fault. The market just crashed.
That recession hurt a lot of people.
Well, I'm here. The financial blow didn't keep me from doing what I wanted to, obviously.
Water under the bridge.
Of course. Now look, you two have quite a long history together, right? A couple of young teachers trying to figure things out. What was that math thing that got you two together?
Oh, yeah, something about screwy lines.
Asymptotes. Lines that can't ever seem to meet.
Oh, yeah, lines that always get crossed. No, uncrossed. Whatever.
Funny thing about asymptotes, the closer the lines get on the vertical axis, the further apart they get on the horizontal one.
Ah, sounds like a marriage.
Hey, that's a line my dear Aunt Sally would really appreciate.
Say, Roger tells me that you've been taking dance lessons, Doug. Is that true?
Yes, from that Australian lady at Oxford Community Center. I learned East Coast swing, West Coast swing, swing-a-ding-ding.
Oh, that's great.
I guess the old football injury isn't acting up anymore.
Well, it's amazing what they're doing these days, rehabbing the knees.
Wow. That's really quite a change for you, Douglas. You were always so averse to any type of dancing.
No, not averse. Just wanting to keep my dignity.
Oh.
You know, I never liked looking like an idiot out in public.
As opposed to looking like one in... Sorry, never mind.
But that's all changed now, right?
Well, I just finally realized I needed to make some changes in my life. To bend with the changing wind, so to speak.
Of course. We all learn to bend a little. Say, Roger and I did something really interesting the other day. We toured the Stetson Mansion in DeLand.
Oh, well, that is interesting.
Yeah, that's something I want to do just before I die.
Oh, really? Why is that?
So when I really do die, I won't notice the difference.
Oh, Doug.
Well, I don't get what is the appeal of going to a dead person's house. If their own family isn't interested in taking away their stuff, why would I be interested in it?
Because it's a snapshot of our time in history. It shows what people valued and how they lived.
Ah, who cares? The last mansion I saw, my ex-wife took me to. I walked in there and it had all this British stuff. It reminded me of that Downers Alley.
You mean Downton Abbey?
Yeah, that. I saw it once. You know, I thought it was a scientific experiment where they were assessing whether it was physically possible for people to die of boredom.
That's a narrow-minded viewpoint.
So what? You think it's classy to see people sitting around talking in a funny accent? I want something with some action.
Exactly how much action is there in one of those football games you're always watching? First, a couple of gas bags in Armani speculate about how someone's going to play. Then the game starts. Coaches grimacing on the sidelines, huddles, players jumping around and acting like a moron after the play. If you boil down all of the actual action, it probably isn't anything more than a couple of commercials.
So we're going to go through this again. You're complaining every Saturday about me watching football.
And Sunday and Monday. Virtually all of the time except for what you devoted to your own team. And even the one time your team didn't play. The one time I couldn't drag you out of the house.
And what did you want to do? Go to a bookstore?
Yeah.
Why go to a bookstore when you can get a book for free at a library?
I couldn't even get you to watch anything else.
What, that thing on PBS, upstairs, downstairs? More of that British crap like that Downers Alley. They probably borrow their clothes at the same place.
Hey, that's all in the past. The distant past. Ooh, listen, the band is playing. Well, Doug, come on. Why don't you show Karen some of the things you learned in that dance class?
We never did get to have that dance at the senior prom. You know, the one we were supposed to chaperone together.
As I recall, that was the day after you told me you were going back to graduate school.
I thought you were looking forward to that night. Where were you?
I had something important to watch on television.
Important? In April? There is no football. What could it have been?
The NFL draft. That's almost as important as the Super Bowl.
You gave up coming to prom for that.
Well, that wasn't the only thing.
What then? What kept you away that night?
Karen, that evening, I was going to ask you to get married. Right there in front of the senior class, underneath that glistening, stupid globe. I had the ring and everything. My only concern was getting down on one knee and the pants in my too tight tux were going to split.
I never knew that.
Well, what were you doing? Why were you going back to graduate school? Were you going to start climbing the ladder?
I was trying to make a secure future.
A future without a husband?
A future not reliant on one.
Well, self-sufficient you are, and always have been. Hey, but we could have danced at that faculty dinner in '94. Remember I got that big promotion that day?
You certainly couldn't expect me to celebrate my complete and utter humiliation, my public rejection. I worked for years to get the job that you got. You want to know what I did that night? I spent it preparing for my exit from that sexist stronghold.
But you didn't have to be such a sore loser. It would have been nice. A gracious gesture.
Gracious gesture? What kind of a gracious gesture did you give me when you lost my $30,000? You couldn't call? All I got was a form letter that said, everything is going to be all right.
Karen, we were under SEC investigation. I was not allowed to talk to anybody then.
Then or ever after? Not a note of sympathy, not a jot of remorse for the damage that you caused, the pain that you inflicted.
I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. But you weren't the only one I avoided. There were plenty of others.
Well, I thought I was more than plenty of others. I don't know how I ever thought that the two of us could be a couple. I should have seen what kind of man you were the first year that we met.
Now, just what is it about me that was so awful? All I ever wanted was a woman who supported what I did, who respected who I was. A woman who wasn't beneath me, but not above me either.
Like our Miss Brooks. A woman who is content in her house with a white picket fence and the breadwinner husband, and who isn't growing a pear tree in her kitchen.
What are you talking about?
The sticker on your cart.
Sticker?
Douglas, I know what you want. You want a world in which all men are created equal and all women use equal, and all of those other weight loss concoctions. You want a woman with perfect curves along the axis. Well, I can't be that woman, Douglas. I never could.
It was used.
What?
The golf cart. It was used when I bought it. I got the golf cart used and it already had the sticker on it.
Oh. Well, what about you?
Well, I'm not like that. Not now. I am not that guy anymore.
Of course.
I've changed.
Yeah, of course. We're all different now. What you two need is to get reacquainted. See each other anew. Why don't you get together and have a television date like you used to have?
Have you changed,
Let me
Douglas?
spit.
Really? Could you really give up one of your sacred Sunday football days? I mean, no, not even that. Just one night watching something like Masterpiece Theater.
Karen, maybe we could talk about it. This Sunday, we'll take a nice drive down to Lake Ridge Winery, just you and me, and have a long, leisurely afternoon. And then who knows? Maybe that evening we'll be in the mood for something very British.
Barb Pearson as Karen Farnum. Prior to moving to the Villages 6 years ago, Barb was a high school history teacher. Anyone who really knows her will find it amusing that as Karen, she teaches math. As a VTC member since 2014, Barb has been involved both backstage and onstage. She loves hunting for the perfect prop, working with the stage crews, and being a part of any cast. She has appeared in Dr. Cook's Garden, Judgment at Nuremberg, The Best Man, Fridays, Send Me No Flowers, Curious Savage, and 12 Angry Jurors. Jack Raymer as Douglas Harrington. Jack always enjoyed theater, but never took the time to participate until he moved to the Villages 3 years ago. Like Douglas Harrington, he took the opportunity here in the Villages to do things he never thought he'd do. Jack has appeared in Run for Your Wife, The Village Vignettes, The Death of Me, and Kalamazoo. He enjoys the rehearsal process as much as the performances. He finds it gratifying to team with the director and the other actors to fully develop the characters and show. Beth Ely as Lauren Casper Martin. Beth Ely has loved theater since the age of 7, when she saw her old maid cousin perform in The Girls in 509, and wondered how this frumpy, quiet old lady could become a delightful comic star before her very eyes. Always an avid audience member, Beth's own stage opportunity was not until 1991, when her husband saw an audition notice in the local paper and urged her to go try out. Surprisingly, she was cast at her very first audition as Philomena, and the front end of the camel costume. And Sister Mary Ignatius explains it all for you. Since that time, she has acted, stage managed, directed, and worked backstage on more than 60 shows in California, North Carolina, Washington, and Florida. Her favorite role was Eleanor of Aquitaine in A Lion in Winter, and recently with VTC as Cora in Mornings at 7, and Dovey Love in A Visit from Scarface. Peter Ely as Roger Dunham. For 35 years, Peter has completely failed to convince a single director that he is perfect for the romantic lead. Instead, in his community theater performances, he has been relegated to more colorful character roles. Some of his more notable being Chick, the burned-out aged hippie in Last Bus to Sunset Lodge, the bearded lady in Farnum, and most recently as a horsehide bedecked villain in the production of Robin Hood. Some of you may have noticed him in VTC's Mornings at 7 or A Visit from Scarface.